So a live action How to Train Your Dragon was recently announced. And yeah, a lot of fans are kinda skeptical. Like, do we really need a live action version? But honestly, I'm just excited to hear one of my favorite soundtracks of all time again on the big screen. And I thought to myself, instead of waiting months to see how it turns out, I figured, why not try recreating one of the most iconic scenes myself? This scene has always been my favorite in the entire trilogy. The music, the moment Hiccup and Toothless take flight together for the first time, it's pure cinema. So I'm gonna do my best to bring that moment to life, because it deserves nothing less. Okay, so since I'm trying to recreate this scene before Universal does, and since they are making a live action version, it really only makes sense for me to also try to make a live action version. But I have no real life actors, nor am I an actor myself. So I'm gonna have to use some CG models. So even though it's not really live action, let's just pretend it is. So starting off with Hiccup, I found this free model online with pretty realistic skin textures, which is the main reason I wanted to download it, because I really struggle with realism in my skin texturing. And then of course he doesn't look like Hiccup right now, so I looked at the casting for the live action film for Hiccup and tried to replicate it to the best of my abilities. It just turns out though that my abilities are low. Anyway, I moved on to modeling the hair, and the process in which I do this is a bit tedious, but I think it's the best way for me to get the look I want. Basically, what I do is I go into the hair particle system and make sure the emission number is 0. Then I just start to place the strands one by one and model the entire hair until I get a decent look. And then have to redo it all over again because Blender is awesome. I'll get more into that later. Then for Toothless, I downloaded a free model online and then started to model all the clothes for Hiccup and the saddle for Toothless, which wasn't too hard, but I'm still not that strong at modeling, so it is a bit rough and not perfect. Now that both Hiccup and Toothless modeling are done though, I can move on to texturing, which is super important to get right when trying to go for more realism. So starting off with Toothless, Toothless already had a decent base texture, but I wanted more realism. So I blended in a crocodile texture to add more depth. And for the eyes, I used a free add-on called Tiny Eye to make them look more realistic. Then for Hiccup, since I already downloaded a free model with relatively realistic textures, I didn't really need to do anything to it. So for all my clothes and then Toothless' saddle, I just used some Polyhaven free textures and just applied them all to my models. And now, before we start animating, I use Blender's built-in human rig for Hiccup. And this basically just allows me to move the bones to then animate the characters. Luckily, the Toothless model I had already downloaded came with a really good rig. And then to attach all the clothing and saddle to Toothless and Hiccup, all I had to do was just transfer the weight paints of the original to the objects. For example, for Hiccup's shirt, I would first parent it with empty objects to the rig. What this does basically is it gives vertex groups to every single bone, but with no weight paints, meaning right now the bones would do nothing to it. And this is key because now I can first select Hiccup, then select the shirt and go to weight paint mode, and then click transfer weight paints. Now this ensures that both Hiccup and the shirt have the same weight paints, so they will move the same way. I also added in some extra bones for the clothes to help make the clothes look like they are moving in the wind. And to then even further build on the wind look, I added a displace modifier to all the clothing with a cloud texture, while also adjusting the strength of the displace to not be too strong. Then changing the mode of the displace modifier to object, so I could then add an empty object that moves along an axis and it makes it look like the clothes are being blown in the wind. I also made sure to paint some areas red in weight paint mode so that they wouldn't be affected by the wind. For example, like clothes underneath the belt wouldn't move. Then just selected that vertex group in the displacement modifier. And now moving on to the actual animation. And this was especially hard for this project. Trying to get a realistic version of a character to have facial expressions and move like a real human does, I found really difficult. And even after finishing this entire project, I still think it doesn't look that good. There is so much room for improvement. But that's what these projects are for, to help me keep learning even more so that my future projects can be even better. And then we move on to Toothless, and animating a dragon is something I've never done before. Actually, come to think of it, I've actually never really animated anything besides a human, so yeah, this was quite tricky at first. But as I did it more, I think it turned out okay. Just a lot of trial and error. Okay, so getting the hair to work was one of the most tedious and frustrating parts of this project. Basically, in Blender, they have what is called hair dynamics, where it will try to simulate your hair as to how it would behave in the real world. But for some reason, it was just not behaving right at all. When I would enable it, it would just get super weird results, like this, where the hair just gets left behind from the character. I spent hours researching and came to the conclusion by the help of multiple threads I found online that for some reason, okay, you're gonna want to pay attention here so you don't make the same mistakes I did, is that when you make your hair in the particle edit mode, which is what I did to manipulate and make my hair, I was doing this all while my character model had the option Shade Smooth enabled before I started the particle editing. And for some reason, I have no idea why, it completely messes with the hair dynamics and just completely broke it. So I had to completely remake the entire hair, making sure that Shade Smooth was not enabled, and it worked. It also made me realize that because looking at the scenes once again, you can see that Hiccup's hair is like completely combed backwards because of the wind blowing on it, and I just really couldn't get that same look with the hair simulation. So I thought, why not just cheat it, and instead just make the hair already as to how it looks in the scene. So instead of how his hair would look normally, now it just looks like his hair is being blown back by the wind even more. And then of course, moving on to the environment, where this entire scene takes place above an ocean, with some mountains on the sides and a lot of clouds in the sky. And starting off with a mountain, I was able to use this add-on that allows me to freely generate a mountain. Then I added some weight paint to the mountain where I'd want some trees to appear. To texture it, I just used some online rock textures and some grass. And yeah, this is what it came to look like. And for the other mountains later on in the scene, I hand modeled them myself because I wanted them to look a little more closer to the scene. And then for the clouds, I would use metaballs to get the overall shape of a cloud, and then convert it to a mesh, and apply a volume modifier to get that look of a cloud. And for the water scene, I just used a really big plane, and then applied an image sequence to it, which was a sequence I exported from using the ocean modifier on a previous plane. Then I also did a water simulation for the scene where Toothless has his wing in the water, which wasn't too bad, or too hard. And then to finish it all off, we have to render all the scenes, which was probably one of the most frustrating parts of this entire project. Because when you wait 5 to 10 hours just for one scene to finish, and then realize that some things look way off, and then you have to re-render it all over again, at some points I was basically rendering for more time than I was actually working on the project, which didn't really help with my motivation to complete the project. Anyway, I also want to show you guys something that kind of saved my butt during this project. Basically, I messed something up completely while working and animating, but that's when I found out Blender has this thing where you can recover Blender autosaves. So by recovering an autosave, I was able to recover my model and everything still intact. Anyway, sorry for my little spiel, but I just wanted to let you guys know, just in case you ever run into the same issues as me. This project overall was both fun, but also very tiring and just super tedious. But I do hope the end result is worth it.
Okay there, bud. We're gonna take this nice and slow. Here we go. Position 3, no, 4.